fear through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Chasing the Pennant, the Phillies podcast here on the Always Next Year Podcast Network. You can find us, the Always Next Year Podcast Network, on Twitter at ANY Podcast. You can find us at ANYP Phillies. And I am here today joined by Biscuit. How's it going, Biscuit?
It's going very well, Rob. Thank you for having me back on the show.
Of course, always great to have you on the show. And we're joined by Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
Very well, thank you. Another good day. I'm just hoping for a little nicer weather. It seems to be raining a lot and very windy, so maybe one of these days we can get like a very nice, beautiful day.
Yeah, it really was a nice day. A little bit cold out, though. You celebrated a birthday yesterday, by the way. Happy birthday. Not really any way to celebrate given the quarantine, but was it at least a good birthday? Did you do anything to celebrate?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, first off. And then, it was my first time I got to be home with the family for my birthday in a couple of years because I was down in Oklahoma State for school. So it was the first time I was home, so it was very nice being able to celebrate with my parents again. So they did a couple things for me. Mom made a cake for me, and so it was just nice to celebrate with them and just hung out as a family. Did a couple different things.
That's pretty nice, man. That's good stuff. It's good to be able to be home with your family for your birthday. So you can find our personals on Twitter. I'm at radio_Rob. Biscuit, where can we find you?
You can find me at BrosifBiscuit on Twitter.
And Andrew?
AJ_Santangelo.
All right, so we're continuing off of some of the shows that we did last week. We had, Andrew, your uniform bracket, and we're moving on to the next round. We're getting closer to the final matchup here into the I guess it's the third round of the bracket here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and we can get our votes and see if we can come to some conclusions with this round of the bracket here.
Yeah, very excited to start this next round off. Each week kind of keep dwindling down, and we're down to our final 8, and after tonight we'll have our final 4 going forward.
The Elite 8.
It's always exciting when you get down to these final spots in the bracket. But the matchups tonight will be Phillies versus Brewers, Nationals Expos versus the Cubs, Rays versus Yankees, and Royals versus A's. I'm gonna mix it up tonight. Let's start with the American League. So on the last podcast we had the Rays Yankees matchup was coming into tonight. It's 3-1 in the favor of the Rays. So let's start with you, Rob, on who you think has the better uniform between the Rays and the Yankees.
You know what? I love the Rays uniforms. I mentioned on the last time that I was on this, not Sunday, but last week, I mentioned that I loved those old Devil Rays neon logos, the like purple and kind of like bright yellow and green. I just thought it was like a really cool logo. I'm not as big of a fan of the current jerseys. And meanwhile, on the other side, you have those classic Yankee pinstripes, those unmistakable, you look at them once, you know it's the New York Yankees. And same with their rogue grays with the blue letters on the back. And personally, I'm a big fan of not having the name on the back of the jersey. I think it kind of just adds to the classic feel, just not having the name on the jersey. They tried a few years ago with the name on the back, and it didn't really fly with them, so they reverted back to not having the name on the back. It's just the classicness of the Yankees is too much to pass up for me. So I'm going to keep the Yankees alive here. I'm going to make it a 3-2 tally now. I am going with those New York Yankees.
All right, perfect. And what about you, Biscuit?
I'm going to go with the Yankees as well. Rob couldn't have said it better. You could go anywhere in the entire world wearing a New York Yankees hat, and someone in that spot in the world will recognize it. It is just such an iconic look. For exactly the reasons Rob said. Anyone knows that logo. Anyone knows that style. I also agree with you, Rob. I kind of like the no names on uniforms look as well. I do think there's something to it. it is just classy. I don't know what it is about it, but like I like the fact that with the Yankees, you need to like know a number to recognize a ball player. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can go back to the Yankees' history throughout their history. You know, all the numbers back in from Babe Ruth on through, the Mickey Mantle days in the 60s and then through the 70s, all those famous players, Derek Jeter wearing the number 2. All those famous players who played for the Yankees, everybody knew what uniform number they were, so they didn't need the names on the back. And so that's kind of another thing that kind of adds to the classic feel of the jerseys.
It's funny. I don't know why, and I'll get into who I pick here in a little bit, but the no name on the back of the jersey, I said this in the last time we did the uniform. For some reason, it bothers me, and I haven't come to a complete conclusion why. I just like seeing the name on the back where, like, I know on TV it's different. You get the name that pops up. But like when you're at the game, it's good to have the feel of like when you see a guy running, chasing a ball in the gap or something like that, and yet you can see the guy's name on the back of the jersey. And I don't know, it just to me, I like having the name on the back because it just shows you more who the player is. And so I'm gonna take a different stance, and I get it, and I didn't really mind when the Yankees did try it, and I think I do like the classic look of the pinstripe. So overall, I do like their uniforms, but I think the no name does give them a knock for me. And with the Rays uniforms, I like their new classic home looks, and like you mentioned, Rob, the Devil Rays uniforms back then. I think that just to me, those uniforms beat out the Yankees for me at least. So I don't know what you guys thoughts are on that are.
So is that your vote? You're going with the Devil Rays?
Yeah, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays / Rays there to give them the 4-3 edge over the Yankees.
Oh man, there it is, the deciding vote. That's a good battle though. I do like that battle. They both have very nice uniforms, the Rays and the Yankees, and it was only appropriate for it to come down to a 7th vote.
Exactly, and then that's when you get down to these final rounds, it's like everyone's got such good uniforms at this point. It's always hard to pick between these final teams, and it just creates such a good matchup there. And then going on to the next one, it's probably even a tougher matchup for me. I don't know about you guys, but we got the Royals versus the Athletics. Let's start with you, Biscuit, on this one.
I've been pretty vocal about me not liking the Athletics uniforms, I think, on the last couple podcasts.
Shane's going to murder you for that.
Well, in this specific matchup, guys, I think I've had a change of heart. I was looking at the two earlier, mainly their current uniforms, and I was looking at the yellow and the green, and at first I'm just like, man, like, I'm not a fan. But, like, after sitting a while, like, I don't think I mind it as much. And I think in this matchup, I take the Athletics just because the Royals, like, I'm a sucker for blue uniforms. I just think it's like, such a classic baseball look, specifically powder blues. We'll get into that later. But in this specific matchup, I just think, I like the more vibrancy that the Athletics have going on with their uniforms. So I went with them this time.
Okay. What about you, Rob?
Oh, man, this is another really good matchup for me. I said on the last show that we did this, I love the clean look of the Kansas City Royals. I love that white with the kind of lightish but not quite baby blue Royals in cursive. And I do like their away uniforms as well. But I also said I absolutely love those kind of Kelly greenish alternate jerseys that the Oakland Athletics have. Those are sick jerseys. They might be some of the best jerseys in baseball. So because of that, once again, I'm forcing it back to you for a deciding 7th vote. I'm going with the Athletics, 3-3.
Okay, and this was a very tough matchup. I think these do have two of some of the best uniforms in baseball. And I don't know, last night when I was looking at this, I was kind of going back and forth, and then this morning I was listening to the podcast episode from Monday night, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to it, but a lot of credit to Sean for doing all this research, and he really went into big time detail on these two franchises and the uniform history, and Sean really sold me on the Kansas City Royals in here, and the powder blue with Bo Jackson I think is just such a good look for the Royals team. I think that uniform against any of the A's uniforms is better. In the sense of in uniforms. But I did forget to mention the tally for this one before. So you guys did carry the A's into the Final Four. So the A's do win the matchup, but I'm going with the Royals again just because of Bo Jackson's look.
The A's were down 3-1, I believe. So we just tied it, I believe, unless the count here was
Okay,
incorrect.
My apologies. I must have miswrote it. I wrote down here on my notes that it was 3-1 A's going into this one.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's my fault. I totally misread that.
Okay.
So
So the A's do win this matchup, so it'll be 5-2 in the favor of the A's. So that's going to be the A's versus the Rays in the Final Four of the uniform bracket on the AL side. So those two. But let's jump over to the NL side for the first matchup. We'll save our beloved Phillies for last. So this one, actually, I'm going to change it again because the Phillies are up 3-1 in this one. So let's stick with the Phillies first before we get into the final one. Because
let's just move on to the next round with the Phillies.
That's what I'm assuming this one's going to go, and the other one's tied at 2-2. So let's save that close round for last. So yeah, let's start with you, Rob, with the Phillies Brewers, and the Phillies lead 3-1. So are you sending the Phillies to the Final Four?
I am, and it's not just because I'm a homer. It's partly because of that, but I've always been a fan of whatever kind of pinstripes the Phillies rock, whether it's the bright red that they have right now or whether it's the maroon that they rocked back in the day. If I had to pick between the two, I would go with the maroon. But I still love the ones that they have right now. I'm still a big fan of the bright red pinstripes. They have a simple yet pretty nice looking away jersey, the gray with the red letters. And I'm not crazy about the cream alternates. We talked about this a little bit in the group chat, but that's not enough to take away from the fact that I'm going Phillies here. Plus, they have the sexiest maroon throwback jerseys of all time.
I always forget that you love that maroon jersey so much. Actually, real quick, while we're talking about those, I don't know if you guys know how they did the they only wore them once back then when they had it, and they got so much backlash they stopped.
Yeah, and then they wore them once last year, and apparently they got backlash again last year.
Unless it's Andrew McCutcheon, and he But no, my dad always likes to tell me the story because he was actually at the game. They wore the maroon uniforms the one time, so he always likes to tell me that story.
That's pretty cool. Be at the one game that they wore them for.
Exactly.
That's pretty sick.
But what about you, Biscuit, on this one? You sticking with the Phillies or you going Brewers?
So I got to be honest. For this one, I was primarily looking at both of their current home and away uniforms. And I got to be honest, the Brewers gave the Phillies a run for their money on this one. I was debating, switching away from my great joy and love of my life, the Phillies in this one. But then I saw Bryce, and I got to be honest, Rob, I'm a fan of the cream unis. I think, day game with the cream uniforms, it's like textbook baseball for me. I just think it's, such a good, clean look. Not that I'm not a fan of the red pinstripes, but I chose the Phillies on this one. Sorry, Brewers, but it was closer than I thought it would be.
Okay, and here's my thing. I'm gonna go Phillies as well because I think I think a lot of the Phillies uniforms are better than the Brewers. But I don't know if you guys would agree with me on this part, but I think for me, the Brewers, I give them the edge. I definitely give them the edge, I think, on the logo. I do love their logo. So I think their logo beats out the Phillies. But when it comes to uniforms, I think the Phillies have a better uniform from color scheme, and then they just have a better uniform overall. But if I was picking logos, I would go Brewers because I love their logo overall.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
You go, Rob. My bad.
No, I was just say you mean the current one that they brought back, the MB that's designed as a baseball glove.
Correct. Yeah, not the one they had a few years ago, just the plain M, the one they just brought back.
Yeah, it's a pretty sick logo.
What I was going to say as well is that's kind of what was factoring into my decision process as well was that logo. It's kind of a blend of like a classic old time baseball look, but kind of like with that modern flair with the new color scheme with it. It was, like I said, it was closer than I thought.
Yeah, that's something I was looking forward to this year. I wanted to see Brewers were getting new uniforms, so I wanted to see how they came out, and obviously we're on the waiting game for that end. But I think they were, on paper they looked they were going to get a pretty cool new look. So we'll see how that turns out when we do finally get to watch some baseball here, and hopefully the near future. But who knows at this point? But moving on to the final matchup here. Again, this series is tied 2-2, so we will be the deciding voters on this series. And you have the Nationals Expos franchise versus the Cubs. Let's start with you on this one, Biscuit.
I went with the Expos. Every time I look at the Cubs uniform, I get less and less enamored with it. And then I was, looking at some Expos jerseys, and I saw Vlad Guerrero in one, and that kind of just sealed the deal for me, just because it was such a, like I said, powder blues. I'm a fan, but even like they're more like current, obviously the team's not around anymore, but they're like uniform closer to the time the Expos were no more, was just such a neat look. It was kind of current for the time, but it still had that old-timey baseball classic feel, and I just really dig it as opposed to the Cubs, where it's just kind of bland and boring for me. So I went with the Expos.
All right, so the Expos take a quick 3-2 lead. What about you, Rob? Do you agree with them?
Oh, man, this is a really tough one for me because not only do they both rock the pinstripes, the Expos and the Cubs, but they have the same color scheme, the red, white, and blue.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
So it kind of, to me, once again, just like it did for the Yankees, it comes down to how classic the uniform is. And the Cubs, once again, have that classic look. They have the red C over the heart. They have, the pinstripes have been there ever since I can remember with the Cubs. I think they've always had pinstripes. And then, the blue hat, the blue helmet. And I actually really like their blue alternate jerseys. They're pretty simple, just plain blue with the C on the heart once again. I'm not taking anything away from the Expos jerseys, but I think what's going to lose the battle is their association with the Nationals, and the Nationals jerseys take a step back. So that's why I'm going Cubs in this matchup here.
Okay, so 3-3 tie and coming down to this last vote. And I'm actually going to go the opposite stance on that. I know on here the Nationals uniform is getting a lot of backlash, and everyone keeps talking about the Expos, but I'm a fan of the Nationals. I like the where they went with the blue tops, and they got I like the W on the chest, and they got the flag look inside that along with on the hats, and I really like that combo from them, and I honestly think that gives them the edge over the Cubs. And again, nothing against the Cubs because I do like the classic look as well, but I think in terms of where the Nationals kind of went, and I know they've had a couple different uniforms throughout their since they've changed from the Expos, but I think overall their new uniforms, I really do like them, and I think they are a pretty good look on them.
That's a valid argument. You do know that when you said you're a fan of the Nationals, I'm going to cut that part out for future use, right?
I should have worded that better, but you have fun with that.
Hey, I did say go Mets on this podcast
Yeah,
at one
I did say
point,
go
so nothing could be more, blasphemous than that.
Oh God, I'm just messing with you, man.
Nah.
Who knows? I might use it at some point.
Go for it. It's all good. That's the fun in doing these is finding those small clips where you can get something gets turned on you. So that's why I enjoy it. It's all fun and games and humorous.
Oh yeah.
But no, yeah, I give the edge to the Nationals in that sense, and I guess they'll go on to the Final Four. So we have the Rays versus the A's in the Final Four in the Final Two in the American League, and then a National League East matchup between the Phillies and then the Nationals / Expos for the Final Two in the National League. And there's your Final Four. And then I have not put it out on Twitter yet, but I will update the fan uniform bracket later tonight, if not tomorrow morning at the latest, and get the next round of that out. And they are on round 3 as well, so we'll get their Final Four after. I usually have it open for a couple days, so probably for our podcast on Sunday we'll have the next round of that ending it for the Final Four of that. So I don't know what you guys thoughts are on the Final Four in that sense. Phillies, Nationals, Royals, A's, Rays.
Oh man, it's really exciting. It's a really good matchup. I mean, the Phillies Expos / Nationals, as you said, National League East, and both very worthy uniforms of being in the Final Four. And then the Rays, who I think were kind of a Cinderella. I didn't expect them to make it this far, but clearly their uniforms are very well liked, and going up against the A's, who have always had very nice uniforms. So it'll be a fun discussion to have with you guys next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I never expected the Rays to get this far either. But again, that's the fun. That's why I love doing these, and that was my biggest miss in the March Madness this year. Is I loved all those fun games. But I think unless you guys have anything else on the uniform, I'm gonna turn it over to Rob here for the fun pitchers draft here, which he will explain in a little bit.
Okay, so we were mulling around ideas this week, and I thought of, okay, we've gone through position by position in the National League. We've done things like that, but we haven't done anything like a draft. And this idea came to me because of the fact that the NFL draft is coming up tomorrow night, and obviously a lot of Philadelphia is keyed in on that, seeing what the Eagles will do. I figured, why not have a draft of our own? And to kind of keep it interesting, but also, I guess, simplify it at the same time, we narrowed it down to Phillies pitchers post 2010. So, Andrew and Biscuit, you guys are going to go 1-2. We'll decide that in a second. I will go third. And here's how we're going to decide which of you will have the top pick in this draft. I'm going to drop a trivia question. You guys will both answer at the same time. You have 5 seconds to literally throw out a number and guess the answer. And whichever one of you is closest will get that top pick. So, are you guys ready?
Absolutely.
I'm ready.
All right. So in the year 2007, Chase Utley, who this podcast is named after, posted the highest batting average of his career. What was his batting average in 2007?
334.
323.
Oh, man, Biscuit gets it. It was 332.
Ooh. I'm not going to lie. I looked at it earlier when I was doing my Utley, Howard, and Rollins thing.
Oh, man. Were you reading my mind?
It was one of those, Rob, you said that, and as soon as it rolled off your tongue, I was like, it was in the 330s. I know this. Huzzah. Like, oh, I thought I wasn't going to know it, but I'm hyped now.
Okay, so you get the first overall pick in this draft, and for each of these picks, we can kind of go through a little bit of a description of why we would go with this player. Obviously, we're going to talk more about the earlier picks and then the later picks, maybe a little bit less. But who are you taking with the number one overall pick in the Phillies post-2010 pitcher draft?
You have to go with the GOAT, and I'm going to go with Doc. A man who needs no explanation, or there needs to be no rationale for my pick here. Although he really only shined in 2 seasons with Philadelphia, those were some of the best pitching performances I have ever seen in my lifetime. He was a treat every night, and it was just a gift for fans to see someone so talented in his craft. And he's one of the best in our entire lives that we've ever got to watch or that will ever pitch in baseball. So Halladay 1,000%.
Yeah, I would have to certainly agree with you for taking Doc number one, just based on that 2010 alone, throwing the perfect game in the postseason no-hitter in one season, having the Cy Young Award that he won here at 21 wins, just absolutely incredible. And then he came back the next year, and I think he had 19 wins and like a 2.3 something ERA then too. So 2 very excellent seasons here in Philadelphia, which is, as good as he was in those 2 years, certainly worthy of being the top pick in this draft. So I can certainly agree with that. Andrew, you've got the number 2 pick. Who are you taking?
When I was looking at this earlier, if I didn't get the first pick, I thought Halladay would go first. I really started to look at the other guys because there's a couple names I feel like you could go with this, and I kind of limited it down between 2. Longtime Philly Cole Hamels, and then eventual Philly Cliff Lee. Had a couple stints here. And I kept going back and forth, and I almost, if I was going to go Hamels, I would have felt like it was more just because I liked him better. I think overall the better pitcher and the guy I'm going to select is Cliff Lee. I think when he got here, he was just tremendous. He always came in here and he was a workhorse, and he pitched the 10-inning game the one time. He came out in 2009 and kind of just dominated when we got him. Got the World Series victories. Obviously, we didn't end up winning, but kept us in the series as much as he could. I just think overall Cliff Lee's the better pitcher.
Yeah, I could It's kind of a toss-up for me. I was thinking about who I would take between those two because I knew that Doc was going to go number one, and I knew that I would have whoever didn't go two after Doc. So for me, it was going to be kind of a toss-up between those two as well. But I could certainly see why you would take Cliff Lee. I think that during the peak of his career, he was better than Cole Hamels ever was. Maybe he wasn't as good for as long, but those few years where he was at his peak with the Phillies, just an absolutely excellent pitcher. So certainly a very good reason to go with him, number two. As for me, if I had to pick between the two of them, I still would have gone Hamels, and that's who I'm going to take number three. Cole was excellent from start to finish here. Came up, I believe it was in 2006, and then traded away after throwing that no-hitter in 2015. Had the one bad year in 2009 and kind of rubbed some people the wrong way with some of the comments that he made that year. But you can never take away that 2008 World Series MVP and just how good he was down the stretch and in the playoffs for them that year. And really throughout the majority of his career here in Philadelphia, didn't put up the sexiest numbers every single year, but he was consistently a very, very good pitcher. And a huge reason, once again, why we won that World Series in 2008. When he was on his game, he was absolutely unhittable. And, of course, he was literally unhittable in his very last start as a Philadelphia Philly, and almost got it thrown away by a bad read by Odubel Herrera in center field. But unfortunately,
I was going to say, that still scares me watching the replay.
I still get heart palpitations watching him misread that Chris Bryant fly ball there. But fortunately, he is able to dive back and make a pretty great catch to save that excellent, maybe even career-defining moment for Cole Hamels. Cole Hamels, my number 3 overall pick in this draft. All right, so we will move on to the second round here, and since I picked third, I will go first here in the second round, and I'm going to go with the guy who's currently on the Phillies right now. That is Aaron Nola. I knew that he was going to be on the minds of some of you guys with your next pick, but 2018 was an excellent season. He did slide back a little bit last year, but I just think that for the future we can, and I've said this before on a few shows, we can expect to see a lot more of what we saw in 2018 as opposed to what we saw last year. He's a really good pitcher. His curveball is one of the filthiest I've ever seen. And I think that he's going to throw a no-hitter at some point. We've talked about a couple guys. Doc threw the 2 no-hitters, obviously. Cole threw a no-hitter. I think Nola's got a no-hitter in him as well at some point during the stint with the Phillies. And he is going to be my second pick and the 4th overall pick here, the first pick of the second round. And so, Andrew, we'll go to you. Who would be your second pick for your rotation?
This is where it kind of gets tougher already. It shows how tough this pitching staff has been these last couple of years. But I think you got to go back to the really good division years, and it was another midseason acquisition. I'm going to go with Roy Oswalt. I think I know he was only here for a couple of years, but he came in that year in 2010 and really helped us get to where, I know it wasn't where we wanted overall, but he came in, finished with the Phillies a 7-1 record that year and a 1.74 ERA, so a really good year that year, and then followed it up with a 3.69 ERA in his full season with the Phillies. So I think, again, I know he wasn't here that long, but his talent was fantastic when he was here. Another guy I always liked going out there watching him pitch every fifth day, and every time he was on the mound, you thought you had a great chance to win the game. So I'm going to go Roy Oswalt.
He was so underappreciated when he was here because he is kind of, the fourth piece of that R2C2, if you will.
Exactly. And it was always like, oh, we got Holiday, we got Lee, we got Hamels, and it was like everyone always forgot about him, as you said. And I think even to this day, you think back, and honestly, I almost forgot about him too when I was looking at the names, and it was like you knew you were missing somebody, and his name didn't come to you came to me for a couple seconds, and then finally it comes back to you when you look it up. But yeah, it's kind of ashamed of myself there. I kind of forgot about him a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't forget about him. I still got his jersey. So I actually wore it the other day. Do you remember the time that he came in and played left field after Ryan Howard got ejected from a game? They had to move Ibanez to first base.
I love watching. Even though
he made it play too.
He did. Yeah, he caught a fly ball.
Even though they end up losing that game, I love like looking on YouTube and looking just at those final couple innings because for how laid back Howard usually was, man, he just goes off on the was it Angel Hernandez? I think I might have been at third.
It was Scott something or other. I forget his last name.
Okay, maybe Hernandez was behind the plate. I don't know. But,
He probably was umpiring that game. He's notoriously a pretty bad umpire, so
Exactly.
he probably was.
But it was funny because how laid back Howard was, and he just flips out on the ump and obviously ends up getting ejected. And the other thing I love is listening to the call. I don't know if you guys ever go back and heard Larry Anderson make
L.A. They just played it on WIP about 2 or 3 days ago.
Because he just goes off on the umpire. It's one of the funniest things, and that's the thing I love about LA is he never holds anything back on the radio, and when he's mad at an umpire, he will let loose.
Completely uncensored. Yeah, LA is great. But all right, so we've got Doc, we've got Cliff, we've got Cole, we've got Nola, and we've got Roy Oswalt off the board. Biscuit, who are you going with your second pick?
You know, I forgot this guy was a pretty, reliable pitcher in his, I believe, 1.5 seasons with Philadelphia. I don't know if he finished his second year here, but I'm going to go with Jeremy Hellickson this round. He was an acquisition prior to the 2016 season. He pitched a little shy of 200 innings that year. He had 189 innings pitched. FIP was right in the high threes, a little. It was like a 3.98. His ERA was in the 3.7s. Good enough arm. Definitely someone you could throw out there every fifth day who isn't going to give shit, as opposed to some of the other arms in that rotation, which included a horrible Zach Eflin, Vince Velasquez. That was kind of that year where you thought he was going to be the next big thing, but he had a terrible season after his hot April and May, I believe. But Hellickson was kind of just consistent, and he chugged along, and I can't think of a better guy than 2016 Jeremy Hellickson to be my number 2.
That's an interesting choice there. I think a lot of people kind of underappreciated really what Hellickson did while he was here, just because the teams around him were so bad, but he was consistently a pretty solid pitcher. So I like that pick at your second overall pick. So because you're ending the second round, you get to start off the third round. Who is your third choice?
So this was a guy that I was originally going to pick for number 2, but we can't forget the true number 4 of the Phillies 2011 rotation behind Halladay, Lee, and Hamels. The Vanimal, Vance Worley. I said Vince. Wow. That season, I believe he finished top 5 in a Rookie of the Year voting. He pitched a little shy. He pitched about 130 innings. FIP in the 3.3s. ERA 3.01. Just very consistent and at such a young age too. And he was someone who I believe he pitched some time in the big leagues in 2010, but it was kind of meh. You didn't really expect anything of him, and then he just kind of jumped off the page with a pretty solid year. Definitely made up for the production that they lacked with Joe Blanton in the back of the rotation, and Roy Oswalt I know missed a lot of time that year dealing with injuries, and I believe he had a family situation that he had to attend to as well, so he missed some time for that. And he really kind of picked up the slack that those two guys weren't making up their share, and he kind of picked that up, and he was very dominant. I don't believe he had much success the rest of his career, but for that 1 year, he really looked like he was the next big thing.
Yeah, who could forget those glasses though?
Oh,
it was that look. He kind of reminded me of a Wild Thing from Major League. That look. Yeah. Man, I'll never forget being at a game that he pitched, and it wasn't really. I don't remember it for the fact that he pitched it. He did throw a complete game, and it was overshadowed by the fact that Chase Utley hit an inside the park home run. It was against I want to say it was San Francisco. But yeah, he did throw a complete game, and I think it might have been one of the only ones of his career. But yeah, he did look like he had some upside. He had some potential at one point. Unfortunately, it didn't really pan out for him, but for a short period of time, he was a fun pitcher to watch. All right, Andrew, who are you going with your third pick in this draft?
Well, I was hoping to go with actually Vance Worley. So Biscuit just took my pick there.
Vanimal's getting some love here. How about that?
So I think I'm gonna go with Kyle Kendrick. I think
Oh man, I was thinking about him. That's a nice pick.
and it's funny. He's always had his up and down games, and you never, for the most part, he was pretty good for the most part. But then every once in a while, he'd have that really bad game, and it was kind of like he was one of those pitchers who always felt like he was either going to give you incredible stuff, go kind of deep into the game, or he was going to get like shelled and just like exit the game early. And he kind of always drove me crazy a little bit, but definitely in this early time here, and then even when the things kind of started to get bad, he was the consistent double-digit winner in that Phillies pitching staff. And really, from 2010 to 14, when he was with the Phillies, only one of those years did he not get 10 wins, but he still won 8-6 with a 3.22 ERA. So in the end, I'm going to go with Kyle Kendrick.
All right, certainly a very worthy choice there. He was always kind of an interesting pitcher to watch because personally, I never really knew what to expect from him. He was never great, but he was never really terrible at the same time. He's always consistently somewhere between like good to okay to somewhat mediocre in that range somewhere. There were no extremes with him. It was always kind of somewhere in the middle there. But I like that pick for the third overall, given the fact that the Phillies haven't exactly been setting the world on fire with pitchers since R2C2 was broken up.
That was one of the hardest things. When I went back and I looked at everyone who's made a start for the Phillies since 2010, and I wrote down every name. It came out to be we've had 52 pitchers that has started at least one game for the Phillies since 2010, and some of these names are just not good, to put it simple.
You see, you had a whole draft board going there.
Exactly. I had to be ready for it.
Oh man, maybe you can take Howie Roseman's job.
I want to. I'm excited for tomorrow. I really want to see where they go with that, and I just hope they're smart about it, which Howie Roseman always makes me nervous for when it comes to drafts.
Yeah, he makes everybody nervous. Anyway, I'm going to go for my third pick. This is a tough one because we're starting to lose some talent here in this draft pool. I'm going with Joe Blanton. He was more known for what he did post 2010. He wasn't really as good, or he was more known for what he did pre 2010. Excuse me. He wasn't really as good post 2010. Still had some decent numbers. He put up a winning record. He was kind of like Kyle Kendrick. You could always count on him to be okay. You would never expect to get the 7+ innings of 1 or 2 run ball out of him, but at the same time you could put him out there and be fairly confident that he's not going to get shelled either. So Joe Blanton, I think, would have to be my number 3 in my rotation.
Hey, any hits big time home runs in World Series.
Absolutely, yeah. He closes his eyes and swings as hard as he can. That's what he said in the interview. I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, all right. He had no idea what he was doing up there. Because we get it from an AL team, so he barely bats before that anyway. So.
Oh, man. All right, so my number 4, and actually, in retrospect, I would go with him before Blanton, but he only started a few games for the Phillies because of an injury, and we mentioned him on a previous show. I'm going with Charlie Morton.
Ooh, that's a solid late-round pick.
That's a sleeper pick right there. So Charlie Morton being my 4th starter. Actually, he would probably be my 3rd, and Blanton would be my 4th. But just those handful of starts that he had, he looked like he could be very good. And then unfortunately he got hurt, and then he went off to Houston. He won a World Series there. He was excellent. And what could have been? I'm going off of what could have been here. So yeah, just what we've seen from Charlie Morton in other teams' uniforms is my reason for making him my 4th pick and my 3rd starter. All right, so going back to you, Andrew, who is your 4th starter in your rotation?
So it's actually kind of a combination of Joe Blanton and Charlie Morton in terms of like the 2010 and beyond. But I'm gonna go with the guy who's probably more known with his time with the Phillies. Again, pre 2010, but made a few starts that 2010 season before being traded for my other pick in Oswalt. But I'm going with J-Hat. I think another guy that might be kind of forgotten in that time just because he kind of got pushed out with all the other big-time arms we brought in. Then even his post-Phillies time, he's had a pretty successful career, still pitching to this day. He's going on 14 seasons, but would have been his 14th this year. So kind of, again, another guy what it could have been if he stayed with the Phillies, he could have turned into kind of a fan favorite more. But in terms of what ended up happening was he got shipped out just kind of because of the talent we brought in, and he was kind of young at the time. But I'm going J-Hat.
Yeah, J-Hap was always an interesting player to watch, too. You never really – I don't think us Phillies fans knew what he was going to be when we traded him because, like you said, he only really had a cup of coffee here, and he showed some flashes while he was here. We got good value, obviously, in return, getting Roy Oswalt. But it turned out that J-Hap had himself a pretty damn solid career after he left town. So, and he's still an effective pitcher.
Exactly.
So that's a good pick there. I like that. Another kind of sleeper at number 4. All right, Biscuit, who are you going with for your 4th pick?
So for my 4th pick, I have decided with the guy who had, when he first got traded to Philadelphia, looked like he could be at least a very serviceable pitcher, and only followed up with a pretty solid 2016 year as well. I'm going with Jared Eichhoff, just because he was really one of the only guys that, kind of came up quick. I believe we got him in the Hamels deal, and he was right up in the big leagues that season. In 2015, in 51 innings pitched, ERA under 3, FIP in the low 3s. Never really much of a strikeout guy, but he was pretty dominant. And in 2016, he was arguably, aside from Hellickson, the most reliable starter in that rotation as well. And I think he would be a serviceable number 4 pick.
You know that Shane is going to love you there, our resident analytics guy, for using the term FIP numerous times on the show.
Yeah, I'm someone who, I'm not going to pretend I understand literally every single statistic, and I am kind of an analytics person. Data is useful, but I'm not someone who goes overly crazy about them. But FIP's one that I think is a pretty good indicator of how a pitcher performs.
No denying that. I think it is as well. And I think that analytics do have some sort of a spot in the game. I'm not as big on them, obviously, as you and Shane are, but I love the use of the term FIP, though. It's
I like the word, too.
Gabe Kapler would love it, too. So.
just kind of rolls off the tongue nicely. And the Jared Eichhoff, I think, is a reasonable pick there. Once again, injuries have kind of derailed him a little bit. He did, just like some of the other guys in our rotations here, he showed some upside, and then unfortunately the injury bug did bite him. But he's still got a chance to bounce back, and we'll see what he has in store for the future there. So I like that pick at number 4, your 4th overall pick, Jared Eichhoff. So to start the 5th round, we're going right back to you for the final piece of your rotation. Biscuit, who are you going with?
I knew I was going to pick this guy for my number 5 if he was still around, just because, fuck it. I'm going with Arrieta. Prior, really, even in 2018 when we first acquired him, he had a really good first half. Really did fall apart in the second half that season, but a Cy Young Award with one of the more dominant pitching performances of the last decade in 2015, I believe. World Series in 2016, he was still pretty dominant. I was someone who was really excited when I found out he was coming to Philly. I really thought he was going to be like, the page turner and like be the ace to kind of lead this team for the next couple of years while some of our younger talent like Nola continues to develop. Obviously that was wrong because Nola was the star that year, but Arrieta for the first half really looked like a very nice complimentary get. Even his overall numbers, they're not as sexy as you would have liked, but they're still not terrible. That season he finished with a 3.96 earned run average. His FIP was I believe in the mid to low fours. He still pitched over 150 innings. Strikeouts were down as opposed to other years, but he really wasn't throwing as hard as he used to be able to. But for a number 5 guy, you can't beat that production.
Man, I hate the fact that Arrieta had to be thrown in here.
The skull denter.
I agree. I was not thinking about Arrieta at all.
Oh God, Andrew, who are you going with for your last piece of your rotation?
So I know the last couple times we've been talking about what could have been. I'm gonna talk about a guy that it's a what can be. I think last year, I know he's kind of struggled in the beginning of his career, but I think last year he definitely showed some really good signs. Had 2 complete games, and even one of the few Philly shutouts in the last few years. And it's Zach Eflin. I think he's dominant at times, and when he can throw what he wants to throw, he's been excellent. You saw it at the pre-All-Star break last year. I think Chris Young, the pitching coach at the time, really got in his head, trying to force him to throw the way Young wanted him to throw. And then even in the back half, when Eflin kind of just said, you know what, I'm gonna go out there and just throw the way I want, and you kind of saw him kind of settle back down and kind of re-get that pre-All-Star game pitching back. And I think if he can continue to do that, and with bringing in a guy like Brian Price, hopefully he can continue to help him, the new pitching coach, and I think it can be a really good thing for Eflin, and I really like his potential.
Damn, you took the guy I was going to go with. Man. But, yeah.
I love Jeff.
I think Eflin is so underappreciated, and I know he gets shit on a lot in this podcast here. But you know what? I agree with you that he has the potential to be a pretty good pitcher. You know, he's not going to be a star, but I think he's going to be serviceable as long as he can stay healthy. So I like that pick, and I hate the fact that you took the guy who I was going to go with for number 5. All right, so for my 5th pick, since you took the guy I was going to go with, I'm going to go with somebody who only pitched for 1 year in the 2010s decade, and that was in 2010. I'm going to go based off of what he did before that, but that guy is Jamie Moyer. And the fact that he was so good at such an advanced age, you know, well into his 40s, and obviously the storybook thing of being that veteran player around for 20 plus years, comes back to his hometown and wins his first career World Series after, 22 years in the major leagues or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that he wasn't a hard thrower, that he relied on location and relied on having good movement in his pitches in order to be effective. That's one of the big things for me. I love seeing that. I'm not a fan of velocity pitchers. I'm always a fan of location guys and guys who can mix it up and have good movement on their pitches. And that's one reason why I was always a fan of Jamie Moyer. And the only reason that he's the 5th guy in my rotation, as opposed to being up further, is the fact that this is supposed to be a 2010s rotation, and he only pitched in 2010, and he's gone after that. So Jamie Moyer, my 5th guy in my 2010s rotation.
Yeah, I think it's a great last pick. And the thing I love about Moyer is, he never had the hardest velocity to begin with, but even when he kind of got in the back half of his career, he knew he couldn't pitch the same way. And that's what some guys kind of try to do. They kind of just keep trying to throw the same way they have the whole career, and then it kind of comes back to bite him at the end of their career. But he was a guy that knew he couldn't throw hard to begin with, and he couldn't throw as hard in general. So he knew he had to mix up his game and mix up his pitches, and he was so good at that. And just his baseball IQ is what helped him keep going, I think.
Yeah, and there's a reason why he was able to pitch until he was 49 years old. He saved his arm. He didn't wear it out trying to throw, 95, 100 miles an hour for all those years. So those 78 mile an hour fastballs probably added, 5-10 years onto his career at least.
Exactly. And it's a shame he had to end in Colorado because, of course the ballpark kind of blew him up in his last year.
Yeah, it doesn't help pitching out there. That does not help at all. So you guys got any final thoughts on this rotation thing here? You got maybe any honorable mentions or anything that you do differently?
Dishonorable mentions?
Dishonorable mentions? Yeah, it's more like it with the pitchers that we've had.
No, it It was funny looking at some of these names, guys. Like, I mean, just for example, when we made the trade for him, like Jake Thompson, he was supposed to have like such a high upside and just never panned out.
Remember Alec Asher?
Yes.
I was at his first career start, or his first start as a Philly, and I just remember after that trade, everybody was all excited. Oh, Alec Asher's going to be a big deal here in Philadelphia. I went to his first start as a Philly. It was against the Padres, and he got shelled, and I don't think he was ever good after that.
It's really funny how some of those guys got here, and I mean I can go on the list of names I wrote down, and there's just so many of those kind of names like Ethan Martin, another guy. I think he's the guy we got maybe from the Dodgers. I think in the Rollins deal maybe or the Utley, one of them, or maybe even the
Jonathan
Ruiz.
Pettibone.
Yeah,
I thought both of those guys were going to be something at some point, and they just never panned out.
Tyler Cloyd. It goes on forever.
Jesus Christ,
Ben
Tyler
Lively.
Floyd.
Oh my God.
Hey, at least Ben Lively could hit. You know, he had
That's
2
true.
homers that year.
That is true. He at least could hit home runs. But and then I don't know. Then they try to go with the veterans like Chad Billingsley and Clay Buchholz, and it was just
Aaron Harang.
yeah, Aaron Harang, AJ Burnett, I think.
Oh gosh.
AJ Burnett lost 18 games. It looks like in his only season here in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
my
it was,
God.
I think
He wasn't even that bad of a pitcher. I think it was more of a factor of him not getting any run support, but still losing 18 games.
I think that was the National League leader, or I guess you can't call it leader, but I think it was the most losses in the National League.
Something like that. Yeah, I think it was the year that we lost 99 games as a team.
Probably. And then there was I guess one more. It was the guy from I forget where he's from, but overseas, Severino Gonzalez. I remember when we signed him, he was supposed to be like one of our big high upside signings. That it wasn't coming from our minor league system, and then he just never panned out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Career 0-4 with a 6.68 ERA.
Sexy.
You know who I want to give an honorable mention to? I want to give an honorable mention to our boy Ranger Suarez. His career numbers, 7-2 with a 3.68 ERA.
Okay.
That's pretty good. And who knows what would have been this year if they could have played? Because I really think he should have a chance for that fifth spot.
Yeah, I guess you were the other one who was agreed with me in that argument that he should be in the mix for number 5, and Shane was giving the shit for it. Well, I just threw out some pretty good numbers right there that aid our argument. So listen to that, Shane.
No, yeah. I mean, just ask the question. Who'd you rather in that fifth spot? Ranger Suarez, Vince Velasquez, or like Nick Pivetta? I'm taking Ranger Suarez all day.
I'm going Ranger as well. I'm absolutely going Ranger there.
I still think Nick Pivetta would have gotten it just because I think it's like his job to lose again, which I feel like that's the narration with like the 4th and 5th spots of our rotation every single year. It's like the guys who currently have it, they get one more chance to prove that they suck, and then we'll reconsider, but there's no reconsideration. They're just like, oh, we're going to try it again. But I still think Nick Pivetta probably has more of an upside than Ranger Suarez or even Vince Velasquez at this point. But I don't disagree. I think Ranger Suarez, certainly in what we saw from him in spring training, like nobody that was up for the 5th job was really shining, but at least he was a bit more consistent than some of the other candidates.
Plus, we desperately need that left-hander in our rotation too. So
yeah, that's something I really miss. We haven't had. I mean, I know at the end of last year we ended up having a couple in Drew Smiley and Jason Vargas, but we never and actually they even started Cole Irvin I think a couple games. But
Jesus Christ, that was a fucking experiment right there.
Yes, it was. He couldn't start or relief. I mean, no matter when he came, he was giving up runs. But no, yeah, I think to start the season to have a lefty would have been big.
Yeah, we haven't had a good lefty in our rotation since Cole Hamels, and that was 2015. It's been a while.
Yep.
So talking about, we mentioned a number of those pitchers in our rotations that are from that memorable era, that run from 2007 to 2011, the dominant years there. And Biscuit, you brought up something that you saw on Twitter about who was the heart and soul of those Phillies teams, and it comes down to Rollins, Utley, and Howard. So why don't you take this one away here and talk about that post that you saw on Twitter and what you think about it?
Yeah, Rob. It was I believe it was NBC Sports who tweeted it. It was a picture of Howard Utley and Rollins, and the question of all questions was who had like the biggest heart, I believe. And it really kind of sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole tonight when I was figuring out which one to pick. Obviously, all three brought something special to the table. Jimmy with his personality, Utley with an unbeatable work ethic, and Ryan Howard with that raw power. And yeah, like I've seen it mentioned on Twitter that like those three had a lot of complementary pieces around them, which really, culminated in that Phillies World Series win in '08, the repeat of NLCS champions in '09, like Worth, Victorino, and Hamels. But you can't deny that Howard, Utley, and Rollins really were the fundamental pieces in all of that run from 2007 to 11. So Rob, why don't you go first? Which guy do you think had the biggest heart and really was the shining star of that of those three players, I should say?
Oh, this is such a tough choice for me because I've said on numerous occasions that Chase Utley is my all-time favorite baseball player, or all-time favorite Philly. And Jimmy Rollins, the best shortstop in Phillies history. Ryan Howard, arguably the best first baseman in Phillies history. The Phillies have had some good ones. They had Jim Thome, they had Pete Rose, they had John Crook. They've had some good first basemen. But, geez, man, that's such a tough thing. And I loved Utley, obviously, throughout his time here in Philadelphia. I loved Rollins throughout his time in Philadelphia. My love for Ryan Howard was kind of more of an appreciation that came after he left. I liked him here, but I didn't really appreciate what he did until after he left the team, after his career was over. But with that being said, the heart and soul of those division winning and in '08 the World Series winning Phillies teams, it's got to be Jimmy Rollins. I mean, he's, as a shortstop, you're the captain of the infield. He was the leadoff hitter. He set the tone offensively, getting on base, stealing bases, had that home run power. He had that one season, that MVP year in 2007, where he had the quad 20, at least the 20 doubles, 20 triples, 20 homers, and 20 steals. He actually had 30 homers that year, hit damn near 300. I think he had like 96 RBIs. And that was the same year that before the season started, he irked all the Mets fans by saying that the Phillies were the team to beat in the National League East. And damn it, he won the MVP award in the season where they came from behind down 7 games with 17 to play to steal that division from the Mets. And I've got to think that he was the catalyst behind that happening. And you know what? He said this after that season ended. He said something along the lines of winning the division is great, but we're going to do even more next year. And I'll be damned if they didn't win the World Series next year. So Jimmy Rollins, I mean, you could really make a very, very valid argument for all three of those guys being the heart and soul of those Phillies teams. But I'm going to go with Jimmy Rollins by a hair.
Yeah, he was really the guy, like, when the Phillies needed to talk the talk and walk the walk, he was always there. When he, said, a head-turning comment like he did when he said, we're the team to beat. He really did put his money where his mouth was. As you mentioned, he was the spark plug, the captain. He really was such a huge catalyst in kind of, energizing everyone. But I'm interested to see, Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, this is definitely one of the toughest questions. But when I was going through it again, like you said, Rob, each one has their argument. I mean, Utley you can't replace the effort and the example he set for young guys and everything he did. I mean, to get loved by the city, rightfully so. I mean, just think about the things when you think about Utley. You just think about how much the city loved him, the work ethic, and how much he embraced the city. I mean. NBC the other day had re-showed his return to Citizens Bank Park in a game he lost to 15-5, and then he hits the grand slam to go up that much, and the fans are cheering him even though he just hit his 5 RBI game against the team. So that just shows what he meant to the city. And then, I mean, you went through all the Rollins stuff, so I don't have to repeat that, but yeah, he was tremendous. But when it comes down to it, Ryan Howard is the pick for me in this situation, just because of again, he didn't have the, like, obviously, like I said, you can't beat Utley's work ethic, but the power Howard supplied for the team, and the big piece he was in the middle of that lineup, to go out there and hit like 40 home runs every year in that tremendous run from '07 to 2010. I think he was above 40, if not pretty close. To get 130 RBIs, if not more. He won the MVP in '06, Rookie of the Year in '05, and I think he might have got robbed in '08 or '09 when Pujols won it. But it was 2 great years there. So in the end, I think when it's all said and done, I think Howard was that piece that really took him to the next level in that case, because I don't think it's as easy to replace all that power and RBIs he was able to contribute to that offense.
Yeah, it's a valid point. And you saw that after he got hurt. Once that injury happened and his power and his offensive productivity kind of diminished, the Phillies really went downhill after that. So that's a valid argument for Ryan Howard. Replacing that offensive output has proven to be very, very hard.
Yeah, I wrote a slash line down. Howard between 2007 and 2011. This isn't even including his MVP year stats. 266 batting average, 358 on base, 539 slugging. OPS was in the 890s. OPS plus was 133 over that time. 200 home runs in 5 innings. Finished top 10 voting all of those years. My pick's Ryan Howard if it wasn't evident. I think he was the most feared hitter in the lineup out at those times. He was just the guy you kind of clamor over, especially as a young boy, getting into baseball for the first time. Watching Ryan Howard, just blast balls into the night is one of my earliest baseball memories. And I got to say, for the way his career ended, and not just with him, falling off after the 11 season, but even, being the last out in the 2010 playoffs and in the 2011 playoffs, 2 years you really thought the Phillies were going to go all the way again. Most people were betting on them, and it really seemed like they were going to be the ones to carry it all the way again. And for him to kind of go out like that 2 years in a row, especially in 2011 with the injury, and he was not a great ball player after that, but I still felt like he brought the energy for those remaining 4 or 5 seasons he was with us afterwards. Every single game that he played, he still tried to be, the Ryan Howard that he was, which is probably almost a bad thing because he didn't make adjustments. But, he still brought it. And when he was on in those crummier years, it was still exciting to watch. Plus, he was a lifetime Philly. So his career was, it was born and it died here as well. He didn't get that opportunity like Utley and Rollins to kind of go on and get another shot at a ring. And he still embraced the city, and he, was booed for all that time. And I just think he's still, such a class act person. I can't speak enough about it. My pick's Howard by far.
Yeah, really surprising to see that Utley didn't get a single vote out of the 3 of us, but I can certainly see why you guys go with Ryan Howard. And it's kind of interesting to think about, what if they knew a little bit more about Achilles injuries back then? And I say that because Jay Bruce, when he missed time on the disabled list or the injured list last season, it was because he had the same clicking. I think they said it was like a clicking sensation in his Achilles that Ryan Howard had right before he got hurt. And one thing I picked up on is that right before Jay Bruce went on the DL, I remember him hitting a home run, and he looked a little bit gimpy as he was rounding the bases. And I actually, a few weeks ago, I watched the highlight of when Ryan Howard hit a home run in the NLDS against St. Louis a few games before he got hurt. And he was rounding the bases, and he definitely looked kind of ginger as he is rounding the bases. So if the medical staff or whatever knew a little bit more about the situation, or maybe, Ryan Howard was feeling something and he was hiding it because he didn't want to take himself out of the lineup in the postseason. Maybe if he knew that that was a sign of bigger things to come with that injury, and they did rest him, that torn Achilles never happens.
And I will say this, I know exactly which home run you're talking about, and he crushed the fuck out of that ball. That I'm pretty sure that kind of, if I remember that game correctly, it was the first game of the series.
It was.
They were down because if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Lance Berkman might have hit like a 3-run RBI double.
Fucking Lance Berkman.
Yeah, I fucking hated Lance Berkman. But I remember, I think he kind of gave us the lead again, and they ended up blowing out the Cardinals that night. I think the final was like 11-3. Halladay bounced back after giving up runs in the first inning, and that was really like my last great Ryan Howard moment, was him just kind of knocking it out of the ballpark and really turning the tide in that first game and kind of swinging it into the Phillies' favor. Like I said, I can't talk about Howard enough. He's surely one of my favorite ball players of all time.
Yeah, for good reason, too. Like I said, I didn't appreciate him as much during his career as I do now looking back on it since he retired. So it's certainly, with good reason that he gets 2 out of the 3 votes from us. You guys have anything else that you want to throw in on this topic?
I do not.
I think that's it.
All right, well, Biscuit, I believe that you owe us an embarrassing story.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to forget. Oh, gosh. What
Do you
happened
have
to
one
me?
lined up for us? Because I'm actually going to give you a choice. You can either tell the embarrassing story or you can sing a solo version of Happy Birthday to Andrew.
Nah, happy birthday, Andrew, but I'll tell a funny story. Actually, this is embarrassing because people today, like when I tell this story, they think it's funny because it's kind of sad. It's not really as embarrassing as it is sad, but so not to get, somber or sentimental, talk about anything sad, but my father, he's been sober now for about 15 years, but he used to be an addict. And when I was younger, he was in rehab, and I was old enough to kind of know my father was away, but I couldn't really grasp the situation or where he was. And one time I was at this kid's pirate-themed birthday party, and they wouldn't let me on the pirate ship, which really upset me. And for some reason, I tried to play like a sad card, like, you can't bully me. Like, my dad's in a hospital, and I was a chunkier kid. And the kid, shoves me in the gut, and he goes, "What happened to him? Did he slip on a hoagie?" And then everyone laughed at me, and I kind of ran home crying.
That's more
and
of
now
a
when
sad story.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. Now when I tell the story though, because I was a dramatic little kid. Obviously, the kid was a prick, and I wouldn't give him the oxygen that he needed to breathe if I had to. But it was one of those things that I look back in hindsight now, and it's just kind of like chubby me running down the street in tears because someone told me my dad slipped on a hoagie. I am kind of running out of embarrassing stories though.
Oh man. Well, glad to see that everything has turned around for you and your dad after that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And like I said, it's one of those, it is more sad than it was embarrassing, but people get a kick out of, the thought of 8-year-old me running down the street with a popsicle in my hand in tears.
Oh man, I think we've all had similar moments to that at some point or other in our lives. Being 7 or 8 years old and having a piece of candy or a popsicle and just being in complete tears over something.
Absolutely.
I think we've definitely all been there before. Oh man, so you guys got anything else that you want to throw in on the show before we wrap it up here?
No, go ahead.
No, you go first, Andrew.
I was going to say, I know Boric likes to say it, and I'll just take it on our show, but everyone just continue to stay safe, and we're all in this together. And then again, I think I mentioned on it before, but I know it's a tough time for everybody, so if you ever need someone to reach out to, even if I don't know you, just send me something on Twitter at AJ_Santangelo, and I'll feel free to have a conversation with you and chat over whatever.
Biscuit, you had something you want to say?
Kind of just to reiterate what Andrew said, I hope our listeners are staying safe and healthy in these unprecedented times. And when I just wanted to always drop an ever so faithful, go Phillies.
Go Phils. We can all echo that. And we can obviously all echo the sentiment as well that just stay safe, just, maintain your distance, and we're going to get through this thing together. We're all struggling through it. We're all going to be here for one another. Just stay safe, and we're going to get through it. All right, so before we wrap this up, I just want to do a quick, if any of you play MLB The Show, hit me up. You can find me on PlayStation at Legend of Gritty. I believe, Biscuit, you're on there as well. What is your username?
My username
This is another embarrassing moment here.
My username is Susan Heck. 2 S's after the or no, 2 K's. Heck, 2 K's.
You want to give us a story behind that name?
So yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show The Middle, but my girlfriend actually, and this is kind of true, she looks like one of the characters in The Middle named Sue Heck. Sue Heck is like The Middle's a show about like a, typical like family. Sue is the awkward daughter who's, a dweeb. And my girlfriend does kind of look like her, and she actually created the name because when I first got my PlayStation, she was very heavily active on it, playing the Fortnite.
The
Fortnite, as I call it, to be an ass. But she created it just because, she looks like her, and that's really the only real story behind it.
That's actually, you can actually change your PlayStation name now. There's a process you have to go through for it. The first time you change it is free. Every time after that, you have to pay like $5. But that's actually a name worth keeping just because of that story.
Oh, yeah. I'm Sue Heck all the way.
That's pretty good. Anyway, so yeah, if you wanted to play either one of us on MLB The Show, those are our usernames that you can find us at. Also, some of the other guys who aren't on this show who put out a show earlier in the week, some of them have it as well. You can certainly, I think they mentioned it on previous shows what their names are. And if you are looking for social media to follow us on, you can follow us, the Chasing the Pennant podcast, at ANYP Phillies. You can find the Always Next Year podcast network at ANY Podcast. You can find me at radio_Rob. Andrew, where can we find you?
AJ_Santangelo.
And Biscuit?
At Broseph Biscuit.
All right, and you can listen to us on iTunes. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Spreaker. We're on SoundCloud. If you listen to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please give us a rating, give us a review. Always much appreciated. We formulate our podcast based on what the listeners want to hear. And that's how we find out what you want to hear, is by leaving us reviews, giving us critiques and criticisms, telling us what we do well and what we can do better. We appreciate every single last bit of that. Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Just Food. You can find them on the phone at 215-794-3663. That's 215-794-FOOD. They have a couple locations, one in Buckingham Green that is open, that is located off of York Road in Buckingham, Pennsylvania. The other one at Delaware Valley University in New Britain. They have so many great selections. Whatever you want, breakfast foods, lunch, dinner, everything, they've got it. I wouldn't recommend any place over Just Food. They're the absolute top of the pinnacle in terms of food selection in the Bucks County area. If you're looking for something to eat, if you're hungry, definitely stop by, give them a call, place an order. Totally worth it. Their owner, Rob, is a great guy. So once again, that is Just Food. You can reach them by phone at 215-794-3663. And I also want to give a shout out to the band that is responsible for our intro and outro music. That is the Jackdaws. You can find them online at www.thejackdaws.com. I'm a big fan of Celtic rock music. They are excellent Celtic rock music. Even if you don't like Celtic rock, they have a number of good songs out there that I think pretty much anybody would like. Great band. You can find them on iTunes. You can find them on Spotify, SoundCloud. Once again, their website is www.thejackdaws.com. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Chasing the Pennant podcast. We'll be back with another one coming up on Sunday night.
Man, I used to be revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and swear I fall. And that's that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.